Hello everybody and welcome to the 49ers Fan Show, where we talk about all things 49ers all the time. My name is Jeff Malinoff, and today I was planning on talking about the 49ers and Packers Week 3 recap, Sunday Night Football. The 49ers fall to the Green Bay Packers by a score of 30-28 on a last-second field goal and a heartbreaker for the Niners. I was going to talk about how the defense needs to step up, how even though the secondary's banged up, there's a huge hole in there, especially defensive play calling that was very questionable by our new defensive coordinator, as well as the offense really needs to step up more quickly and effectively, especially in the first half. I was going to talk about all that. But watching that game again, I rewatched it. I have to talk about the referees. And I made tweets about this during the game. Tweet me at Jeff Malinoff or at Goldmine Report. I talked about it both ways on both my Twitter accounts. But something needs to be done to hold referees accountable for games like this. It's ridiculous. This was one of the worst refereed games I've ever watched. One of the worst. For both sides of the ball. It wasn't just, there were some terrible calls that aided the 49ers, and there were also some terrible calls that aided the Packers as well. But through and through, this game was terrible. It was completely ref ball that shook the outcome of this game. Almost gave the 49ers a win. And even if the 49ers did win this game, I would be happy, but not as happy because of how the referees acted in this game. Because there would have been almost an asterisk to this game how badly the refs were. And they won't be held accountable. That's what bothers me the most. Referees are not held accountable for their terrible refereeing. Even if they're doing their best, quote unquote. You can take that to the bank if you want. But the fact of the matter is, if NFL players, for taunting, for hits, for whatever have you, are fined, even talking bad about the referees if they deserve to be talked about bad, are fined. Last week, the NFL, $94,000 in week 2 alone for the fines against players. Referees should be fined as well. And I'm not talking about the same kind of fines as NFL players get because the salaries are completely different, obviously. But referees need to be held accountable, and we need to start shaking up their pockets in order for them to really act up. Get better at their job. Because right now, referees are terrible. That Sunday night game, primetime matchup, millions of people watching, referees showed up and did a terrible job. Pass interference calls, missed holding calls, pass interference calls again. Even if they hit on Devontae Adams, I thought should have been flagged. I understand he was in the wrong position, but it was still a bad call. It was still a bad call in my mind. It should have been called. Because look at it this way. If it was the other way around, we would be throwing up our hands going, what the hell? You know, it's one of those things where you got to look at it from the other team's perspective. And the other team, the Green Bay Packers, there was a lot of BS on those calls too. So looking at all of that, looking at all this complete nonsense that's been going on, referees need to be fined for terrible calls. And I'm not saying every bad call they should be fined. That's preposterous. But calls like they've been getting called on, like pass interference, missed holds, ticky-tacky calls, numerous bad calls over and over again, bad games in general. Throughout the game, they did not make up for any of those calls. You know, usually one bad call, they get it right the next time. It was just bad call after bad call after bad call. This refereeing crew is terrible. I tweeted at Goldmine Report, check that out. I said these refs need a week off or two. They need a break. Because obviously they messed up too many times. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to let this happen over and over again. And then when the coaches or the players are pissed and you're saying, you know what, the referees messed up and that's just ridiculous. You get fined for that. You get fined for showing up the refs. You get fined for talking back to the refs. You get fined for everything you think about the refs. Even if they're doing a terrible job, you will still get fined. How is that fair? It's not. It's absolutely not. And, you know, there is another thing that I've seen. Nick Bosa, obviously still playing pretty solid. He could have done better last week. A lot of guys could have done better this week, to be honest with you. It was a whole mess of things that the defense just really crumbled against this Packers team. And the defensive line really needed to step up against a banged-up offensive line, and they didn't get it done. So that's a big concern to me, to be completely honest with you, looking forward. But again, we're still early in the year, plenty of football left to play. Regardless of all that, Nick Bosa is the most held guy in football. Maybe not. Maybe there's more guys. Maybe defensive ends get held more than anybody else. But I don't know how many times I've seen that backup left tackle get Bosa in a full-on headlock in a rear naked choke like this when Bosa's trying to reach for Rodgers or anyone for that matter. Like, they had to call one, and it was Bosa getting his mask literally ripped off his helmet. And they finally call that. But when he's got him like this, they don't call it. I don't understand this holding rule. Is it really holding if... Is this a block or is this a hold? If he's got his neck like this, and he's right there, and the guy's trying to go there, is that a hold? I think that's a hold. But that was just one thing I've noticed for Bosa for weeks on end now. Ever since I've seen him play his rookie year, it's been happening over and over again. But... that's just one thing. But this game was worse. Not Bosa, but just this game by itself was worse for everyone on that field. No one felt good about it. Packer fans were pissed. Niner fans were pissed. Everyone was mad because this game wasn't fun because the refs ruined it. They call it a classic, but is it really a classic when the refs really control the outcome of this game? Or control how close this game is? No, it's not fun. Because if the Niners did win this game, it would have left a sour taste in my mouth still because of how the game was, because of how the refs did it. Refs need to be held responsible. And again, I'm not saying they should be fined tens of thousands of dollars. A couple $100, $500 for a bad game. Or like ejecting a player wrongfully, $1,000 fine. Or like something outrageous like that. Yeah, obviously. But like multiple pass interference missed calls, fine the crew $500. A couple $100 just to say, hey, we're knowing these guys are doing bad, hold them accountable. It's all about holding the guys accountable. If you're going to hold NFL players accountable for taunting and all this nonsense, hold the referees accountable for making outrageous missed calls or wrong calls in general over and over again. You're letting these refs just... I don't care if they do a strike, to be completely honest, because then they're just being a bunch of little whiny... I can't finish that sentence. Because they'll just be whiners, complainers. If they're like, oh, we don't want to be fined a couple $100, NFL players will be like, really? Really? Give me a break. Like, that's the thing. When those refs throw those flags for taunting, that guy's getting fined. It's the ref that gets that guy fined in the end. Because if that flag doesn't happen, they're probably not going to get fined for that taunting rules. But when the ref throws that flag, that guy's losing money automatically. Referees are controlling the NFL players' pockets, but we can't control the NFL referees' pockets? Hold them accountable? Cost them money for ruining a good Sunday night game? What's the point then? And again, if it was just a couple $100, just to show, hey, and then that'll be like the first warning. Second warning, if it happens 2 weeks in a row, increase the fine. Referees need to be fined or suspended or something for their terrible officiating. Suspension's that's a stretch, obviously. I think that's a little ridiculous, depending on what the referee has done and how the players are reacting to it. And if it's the same referee doing the same thing over and over again, then yeah, maybe he deserves a suspension for what he's been doing. But the fact of the matter is, referees are getting away scot-free over terrible calls. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't happen as often as it is. Ref ball is a real thing because the referees are either costing a team a game, helping a team win, or just making it not fun to watch as a viewer, as a consumer. So it really upsets me because, like I said, if the Niners won, I'd be happy. Like, of course I'll be like, yeah, let's go. But at the end I'd be like, well, those calls kind of ruined it a little bit. Because that just... yeah, like maybe Seahawks fans will take the Hail Mary because, one, they're replaced Brenton, two, they won't say, that was an interception. They'll just be a Seahawks fans. Ugh. Hopefully we're facing them next week. Let's see if we get that win back this week's loss to next week. But the fact of the matter is, this game just, since the first snap, it started off bad for the Niners, but then just the continuous ref ball just doesn't make you feel good. And people are, I wouldn't call the game a classic, to be honest with you, because the refs affected so much of the game. It's really not that fun to watch. I don't know. And then, like, once when they do they get the referees from the studio or something, or ex-referees getting something like Mike Pereira getting in from the studio to talk about it, if they don't defend the referee, that means the ref did a bad job. And I saw multiple times during the game where Chris Collinsworth or Al Michaels brought in the ref guy from the studio, and he doesn't defend the referees. He says that was a bad call, or says this, and it doesn't agree with what the referee did. Multiple times it happened. Shouldn't the refs be held accountable for that? If the guy in the studio who is one of you doesn't defend you, which they usually do 9 times out of 10, and multiple times during that game he did not defend those refs, that's bad. Those refs should honestly be ashamed of themselves for how that game played out. And don't get me started on how suspicious Davante Adams coming back into that game was, because I thought he concussed him. I thought he was knocked out when that happened, because he was on the ground for a long time. Then he goes in the tent, like they went, yeah, you're good. Come on in. You're good. Like, what the hell is that? I am very suspicious of that myself, how the concussion protocol worked. The Packers said they did. I want an investigation on that. That's suspicious. That's putting the player in danger, just for a W. But they said he was fine. When it comes to a concussion, I don't care if the player says he's fine. I'm not taking that chance. Because it's dangerous. Because multiple concussions, back-to-back, kill someone. 2 concussions at this, roughly in the same, time span, can kill someone. If they're getting off, even if they're recovering from a concussion 2 days later, and they get another concussion, that could kill somebody. So the fact that the Packers let that happen is very suspicious to me, and I feel like that should be looked at. But the fact of the matter is also Jimmy Ward should have been flagged for that hit. But the refs didn't call it. We're going back to the referees. But, yeah, this whole game was just a sour taste in my mouth. That's why I really didn't want to talk about it. There wasn't a lot of good things that happened. Trey Lance looked pretty good, to be honest with you. That 1 touchdown he had. But I know some people are saying put him in right now. Wait. Patience. Look at Rodgers. Look at Brady. They didn't start their first years, and they're considered the greatest of all time. So be patient with it, guys. Be patient, because you don't want to put the kid in too early and ruin him, because it's not fair. Look at Trey Lance, got annihilated. Granted, the team's worse off offensive line than the Niners, and the Niners' offensive line stunk too. There was a lot wrong with that, so I still believe that Jimmy can win us games. I think it's still smart to keep him there. He's still got another year left on his contract, so why I think he had 2 years left on his contract. Why that's just losing money in that sense. But I think there's also a thing where it goes to, if Garoppolo does well, maybe trade him for a first round pick if he does well this season, but we'll see how that turns up. I think maybe the Dolphins, if we can get the first round pick back from the Dolphins due to Tua getting hurt and not living up to his expectations, and if we have a strong season where they don't have a top 5 pick, we can probably get that pick back. Or get their first round pick for Garoppolo. I think Garoppolo would be a good fit in Miami if we do trade him. I think that'd be a good spot. He can go other places too, but I think for a guy that could start right away, I think Miami's the best situation for him. So we'll see what that happens there. But yeah, referees, you should get fined. You should be held accountable for your actions, dudes. Men in stripes, you zebras. It's not fair for the players and for the fan base and for the NFL to just, and not fair for the fans to watch that kind of game. It's not fair for the players to have to endure that kind of game. The NFL, you need to step up and hold these referees responsible for these kind of actions. But that is our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we will talk about the recap of Week 4 between the Seahawks and the 49ers. I think this is a good bounce-back game. Seahawks are coming off another loss, big-time loss to Minnesota. So if there's any time to take advantage of that, 49ers are ready to step up and get a win back. But until then, my name is Jeff Melanoff. Stay faithful, y'all.